Well, welcome back to another very exciting session of Voices of Video. So I'm Mark Donegan. I am here with Ryan Jespersen from Cires 21. Ryan, you and I go way back. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Mark. We tend to see each other NAB and IBC and then virtually in between. So
That's right. That's right. And I think I've had you on, I don't know, at least 3 of the various podcasts that I've hosted or co-hosted. So yeah, it's wonderful to be talking again. So I know today you're doing some really exciting things in AI, and we're going to talk about that today, but it's sort of a little bit of a preamble and a setup so that you can tell us exactly what you're doing. Everybody's talking about AI. It's like a requirement. If you go to a website, it has to lead with AI. Go to IBC, every booth's going to have AI on it. Why don't you tell us what you're doing and, why it's special and unique and the ground that you're breaking?
Absolutely. I think, well, I don't think I have to explain why AI is special. I think it's quite obvious to all of us. And I think the amazing thing about AI in the way we're using it is Cires 21, and then myself included, have 20 years of experience in live streaming and in the media and entertainment space, broadcast, and so on. And I think a lot of what we're bringing is a lot of our experience as a company and personal experience to create workflows and use AI in workflows that are specific to our industry. So, everyone and their brother is doing an AI integration, and you can go and do an integration with Whisper or LLMs quite easily and build them into your pipelines.
That's right.
But there's actually quite a bit of additional work that needs to happen to be able to make those products usable, to make it accessible. And then, the democratization of the production of video and media has been happening, right, since the 90s when we went analog digital to cloud. And now what AI allows us to do is take some really complex streaming workflows and make it accessible to people working in editorial newsrooms or people who are working on social media production from a live event. These kind of additional kind of product gaps is what we're trying to fill with our Media Copilot product.
Media Copilot. Okay. So is Media Copilot the implementation of AI, LLMs, and all the goodness of what artificial intelligence brings into your existing platform and pipeline, or does it sit outside of that, or how is it integrated?
Yeah, so it started with some R&D work that we did quite a few years ago. So Cires 21 hired a really great engineer called Juan Casal, who used to be at Nokia, used to kind of head the R&D department there for Nokia Video. And a lot of what he's been doing at C21 over the last couple of years is being able to apply a lot of that R&D research around AI specific to these streaming workflows. So to give you an example, our R&D platform, we built it in the cloud. We can go integrate with a variety of different LLMs. We can even work with tier 1 broadcasters, which is kind of where C21 has been. I've always described Cires 21 as kind of the elemental of Spain. They work with every major national broadcaster. They work with Olympic Broadcast Services, Media Pro, EBU in Europe. And because they work with tier 1 broadcasters, a lot of the products that we're trying to do is make them tier 1 friendly. So it's very easy to go and use, Google Meet and use Gemini to do a transcription, but is it broadcast quality? Can you actually use it to do real dubbing work that can be used in movies or TV production or for tier 1 La Liga games? These kind of things is where maybe a lot of those AI integrations, you need to train those LLM models specific to your content. And that's another piece of this is kind of the privacy side of AI. And there's a lot of news coming around about copyright, who owns that content.
That's
the
right.
value in kind of creating your own LLM. There's value in doing that and not using just a general purpose publicly available LLM. So if you are a tier 1 broadcaster in any country and you own the content, you don't want the kind of intelligence that you have in analyzing the content to be available to other broadcasters or to other people. You own it, right? So we're working a lot with these kind of hybrid integrations where we can leverage the power of public LLMs in addition to the value of a private LLM to marry those things together and create much better models to be able to use for a variety of these kind of use cases. And this could be, multimodal analysis for live transcription, speech to text, which is quite a popular subject with things like Whisper and a lot of other technologies that are out there. But the multimodal analysis of trading face and object detection. So if you're doing like a reality show and you can train the model with 100 pictures of a particular contestant, and immediately we can analyze that and be able to help with the editorial production process of doing daily reviews, or the use cases are actually quite varied.
Interesting. Do you find that you obviously have to start with some core set of features, I guess you would say, or functionality, but does every broadcaster, every customer have their own unique, either twist or requirements, or is there some universal, functions that you can build, you can bring to market? I'm curious what you
Yeah,
run
I think
into.
we're starting to see a lot of these broadcasters, like the tier one broadcasters, national broadcasters globally put out a lot of tenders now. The broadcasting market tends to be a little bit behind some of the streaming space, but they are starting to put tenders out because they realize the value of this. So the use cases we're seeing are varied. There's some very, very obvious ones, and there are other ones that are quite interesting. So I'll talk more about the traditional ones. I think when it comes to an editorial room, if you're like the Associated Press or Thomson Reuters or Washington Post, you're producing a lot of video content, and you need to very quickly take that video content, whether it's live or video on demand, and be able to create a draft of an editorial piece that a news professional can then take and go write the blog to go around it, to go write a script to help with the production of a documentary or a live news report in Gaza or whatever it happens to be. Also to translate that, so you can have local language content that's being recorded and immediately create a language version for English, Spanish, whatever it happens to be, and then give you a starting point. So I think there's the news production side of it, which is very interesting from an editorial perspective. I think from a broadcaster perspective, we're doing a lot of like scene analysis, try to create, you can give it like a 95% margin where we can try to find the best break in a video on demand, in a fast channel, or in a live production workflow, to be able to be like, no, this is where the scene break should be, so it doesn't cut in the middle of content. You even see like YouTube doesn't do the best job to actually do a very clean cut when it comes to scene analysis. So we can do that with the AI. And then we can also inform the ad server. This is one example that we're doing with broadcasters of what is the sentiment of and the context of what's coming before and after the ad break. So if you're in the middle of a news report and they're talking about a conflict in war, you don't want to be selling Disney World trips, right? So these things can be used to create better metadata around informing and improving the ad experience.
Wow. Yeah, I can certainly see the value there. So it strikes me, though, that there's a lot of systems integration required. And let's just talk about the last use case around advertising. Who are you integrating with, or are you now being drawn into building your own ad product, or how does that work, so that you can inform the ad decision engine, the DSP and the other parts of the advertising stack, to not show that Disney ad when, it was just showing a natural disaster somewhere or whatever, something that would be maybe not so appropriate.
Yeah, we're definitely not getting into doing an ad service. That's not our motto. We come from the kind of live streaming space. What we want to do is add value around improving the live streaming experience, and even for video on demand streaming as well. We can go analyze the library and create all this metadata to be in a sidecar file and use in parallel to whatever your streaming pipeline happens to be. A good example of this would be, we can do an API call to our Media Copilot service. So we very clearly wanted to build Media Copilot as a cloud service with an API. We do have a web GUI as well, so you can go and use this in the context of a user interface. But the API can do a call to your content, analyze the content, and then create the metadata return to your streaming pipeline that you can then use to kind of inform the media server.
I see.
Another good example of this pipeline is it can be used in parallel with streaming workflows to do, Apple has their new immersive format that they've been announcing and putting a lot of money around to create just better immersive experiences. What we can do is go analyze a piece of content, not get involved in the media distribution side, but create the metadata necessary to go and deliver the media, the immersive format for Apple. So this is something where you can use maybe legacy streaming media components, whether it's FFmpeg or GStreamer or whatever your packager happens to be, if it's GPAC MP4 box or if it's Shaka. And without having to update all that, you can call to our API and we can add all this additional metadata to help with all these experiences, whether it's improving the video and audio at the distribution level, or whether it's adding the value to creating these better ad breaks with your service. So I think that's a part of not having to go and do major updates to streaming ecosystems and pipelines, and use it in parallel to add a lot of AI to this value. So that's a lot of what we're doing with these legacy broadcasters, because they have very complex streaming ecosystems.
Yeah.
And without having to pull out all the plumbing, we can do this kind of in parallel to their network.
So it sounds like what they're really asking is for your service to return, API calls, metadata, et cetera, that then they are taking and doing something with that, right? Either integrating themselves into maybe systems they build, or then going and working with their other vendors. Is that the relationship then here, as to how they're actually actioning Media Copilot?
Yeah, I think what we're looking for kind of in the infancy here, we've had Media Copilot since IBC last year, so it's almost a good year. It's been in production as a self-service SaaS product, whether it's through the API or through the web GUI. What we really found is broadcasters have very unique needs. And this isn't just broadcasters, this is anyone who's trying to do something with media, whether it's a video or audio,
Yeah.
So I'll use Voices of Video as a good example.
Yeah.
You can get this webinar in 30 minutes, 60 minutes. And I know you write a lot of LinkedIn content. You can take the video, throw it at Media Copilot, upload it, or point it at an S3 bucket, or wherever your storage happens to be for the file. We'll analyze the file. We'll create a first version of a summary that you can then use in LinkedIn. We'll create automatic clips and highlights that you can then reformat for social media in 9:16 or in 4:3 or 3:4 or whatever format you want to be. Think about that pipeline and trying to do that. Riverside's a great tool, which is what we're using here as an online SaaS tool, but you always have to take it into an editing tool, whether it is a Frame.io or a Premiere or a Final Cut.
Something.
Well, we do that all for you. So whether it's creating the highlights, which then you can actually choose the in and out points, so we can render those MP4s for wherever you want to put them in your MAM, in your CMS, in your social media content. That can all be done automatically. And then the other thing you can do is take the same content and be able to then create dubbing for it that you can then dub accurately. So there's just this is so commoditized now, but with any commodity, there's good versions and there are really poor versions.
Right.
And what I'm seeing with a lot of streaming vendors, I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of very, very rudimentary integrations with things like Whisper because it's so easy, but they haven't trained the LLMs to actually create very good translations or very good transcription to begin with. So it ends up becoming garbage in, garbage out with a huge margin of error. There's no good speaker detection. There's no good scene analysis. So all that additional data, I think that's the problem with what you see now at NAB and IBC is everyone has an AI logo in their booth, but how many are actually doing it well? And trying to kind of get through the noise and fight through the noise to actually try to create something that's tier one or that's even better than your rudimentary integration is really key.
Yeah. Well, let me give a shout out. Thank you for that. Because I totally agree with you. There is a lot of noise. Finding the signal is incredibly difficult. So let me give a little bit of a shout out. You are going to be in our booth, meaning Cires 21. We'll be in our booth at IBC. And we're very excited to be hosting you along with 7 other partners. So it's going to be quite a party in the NETINT VPU ecosystem booth. But it'll be a great opportunity. I assume you'll be showing Media Copilot there. Is that correct? Okay.
Absolutely. We'll be showing our integration with the VPUs and the density that we can get. And a couple of my colleagues, Dennis and Nacho, have been on Voices of Video, and they've gone deep into what we can do with NETINT VPUs. And then we've also launched on Akamai Linode, Akamai Cloud, with VPUs and with C21 as a live origin and live control pipeline for orchestration as well. And so the density, we demo that and we show the performance of what we do with very high VMAF scores, with also huge power savings, which is really what NETINT offers, right? With the hardware that you guys manufacture. But then similarly, we'll be showing a lot of the Media Copilot demo, just like we were in your booth at NAB.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's talk about where, it's always popular, right? Where are things headed? Where are we going to be in 3 years? And I want to back up a little bit and not so much talk about, crystal ball stuff because, that's fun for us, but I think not very meaningful for those who are like, okay, fine, I guess I'll have to wait 5 years to see if your predictions come true. But I am curious, I like your positioning. You are, you're tier one for European operators. You have some very important, very large customers who may be operating in different size markets than, other parts of the world, but are no less tier one. I think that's very important to note. Where do you see the joining together of where these AI tools, AI technologies, LLMs, when you just sort of wrap it all up, you say AI is just going to be, I'll call it core features or core functionality in video workflows. Do you see that coming anytime soon? Is there a place for just pure, companies or products, that are just basically high quality video? That's it, just stripped down. It's like back to the basics. Or is it going to be in a short period of time or some period of time that if you don't have AI, like it doesn't matter how good your video encoding is or, your core function, like you're not going to be competitive. I'm just curious what you're seeing and what your general sense is.
Yeah, my overall view, whether you're using ChatGPT or in a way that's kind of like your grandfather, or if you're actually going deep and adding AI, is it just makes you more efficient as a human. So the whole idea of it replacing jobs, I've never really subscribed to that. It just allows you to do a lot
I'm
more
totally
with
with you,
less.
by the way, on that point.
Yeah. And so, one of the use cases we're working on right now is with a very large concert producer. They do hundreds of concerts a year from a production facility perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working with a large right owner that is doing this through their live streaming OTT platform for a very large concert coming up this summer. And what we're helping them with is they want to be able to record kind of run and gun content on the fly with an ENG camera in the field, a high vision Makito into a decoder, and then they want to produce social media clips really quickly to go to social media and push everyone to the live stream where they can monetize, right?
Which is a great use case, by the way. I mean,
Yeah,
totally makes sense to me. It's great for the fan. It's
yeah.
good for the artist. It's good. I mean, it's good for everybody,
So you have an artist coming on stage and they can do a quick behind the scenes interview, run and gun, create it. In a human workflow, we're having to download the content, be able to edit it, reformat it for 9:16, upload it. All that can be done with AI, and we already do with our Media Copilot product. So I think the evolution of where we are in our product, there's some really good core tech that we've done. And I think we've built a good system architecture and a lot of really good integrations with very good products and had the lens of several broadcasters. What we've been missing is a productization of this. Sometimes in a lab, you get a little distracted, you get too focused on the technology and you forget about the use cases. So I think this is a lens that we're bringing right now is working with very specific use cases. One of the ones I really enjoy right now, because, I was part of the founding team of Millicast, and Millicast started in the remote production sector where we helped to build Evercast and helping with daily reviews and over the shoulder reviews for pre-production, production, and post-production, right? With our WebRTC-based, browser native platform. Well, we're kind of going the same way with one of our use cases with Media Copilot is there is like a reality show that's being produced with a tier one broadcaster, and they're shooting, I think it's like 50 cameras, a lot of them run and gun in the field, a lot of them IP cameras, a lot of them in studio production. And they want to do face and object detection. They want to do speech to text so that for the post-production, which post-production is kind of a term that really doesn't happen in Hollywood these days. It's actually pretty much happening in parallel to the footage getting shot. So as people are producing the daily reviews is really in the moment reviews where it's coming into the MAM, it's immediately available.
Mhm.
And what we're doing with this use case is we're actually adding all this additional metadata so that the post-production team can see the timecode sync of all these 60 cameras and be able to know who's in each shot. So who's the winner of this week's reality show, or
Yeah.
this is an unscripted use case, but this could easily work for scripted content as well. So this wasn't originally a use case that we had thought about with Media Copilot, but working with this vendor and this tier one broadcaster, we've now opened up a whole nother vertical for our AI tech to be applied to.
Very cool.
A lot of Hollywood content is, it's kind of old school, right? It's not just broadcast, it's actually even a step beyond that, where they're doing things in a very traditional way for the last 20, 30 years. And here we can add AI to make the actual person doing the daily reviews, or the person boots on the ground, actually almost be part of the editorial process instead of just the production assistant or production person.
Amazing. Well, I love it. I like that. Even though the use cases you're talking about are sort of one step removed, 1 degree removed from like the core of, say, video encoding and distribution, which is, as a video encoding vendor, creator of the VPU category, that's where we spend 99.5% of our time, is talking and working in that area. But it's still very much related, to encoding and distribution, because the use cases you're describing are the inputs to these massive platforms. And, I think, there's a lot of discussion around, how consumers are consuming media, their time spent on streaming services versus broadcast, versus pay TV. And of course, the trends have been known for years. People are sort of fading out from some of those more traditional outlets. Pay TV could be one. Doesn't mean they're necessarily stopping completely. Comcast still has, tens of millions. I haven't seen their numbers in a while, so I don't know off the top of my head, but there's still a lot of subscribers. But these use cases, like, going back to the concert, I mean, it's so in the moment, and that's what consumers are looking for. That's what viewers, the audiences are looking for. They want to be at the racetrack, at the F1 race, at NASCAR, at the game, at the concert, at the inn. I think sometimes that half of the experience is not what's happening on the track or on the stage. It's the things around it. At least that's my view. It may not be true, but so it's cool that you're enabling this, is what I'm hearing.
I think one of the predictions is that I have about AI and how it relates to kind of streaming. And kind of like you, I spent the bulk of my career actually on the vendor side from worked at Wowza from the media server side and the infrastructure side. And even Millicast was more of kind of an architecture and a CDN, and an origin. From that side, I haven't seen AI used very much yet. So most of AI has been around, let's add metadata, because there's a lot of money around metadata or workflows that can help, the ones I've mentioned previously. Where I think AI can be used, and I think it will come, is the actual distribution side. So there's a lot of just-in-time encoding research and products coming out where you're trying to, there's a commoditization of the infrastructure and the systems side of delivering streaming packets and streaming content. But what about creating, you have a particular person who's asking for a video on demand file. You're not only doing a just-in-time encode, you're also detecting much more information about what they're detecting, what device they're on. Did they pause and go away and then come back on a different device, which happens quite commonly? How can AI be used to actually predict some of this and save a lot of the architecture deployment, which right now is quite cumbersome in a lot of these legacy streaming ecosystems to do that? So I think AI applied to streaming workflows, whether it's live or video on demand, is a place I haven't seen a lot of innovation yet. And I think that's probably in the next year or two, you're going to start to see a lot. Yeah. I think you already get a lot of the big kind of, walled garden platforms, be it Netflix, be it Prime Video, who are maybe applying a lot of that because we're talking about just huge cost savings.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the other streaming OTT services that are in our industry, I think they haven't done a lot of this yet because they really haven't had the budget, I think, to go and invest.
Well, correct. And, it strikes me one of our taglines or a phrase that we often use in our marketing and, when we're out in the market is, it's well understood now because we've actually been a part of educating the market that YouTube runs largely on ASICs or, VPU. They call it something a little bit different, but, it's an ASIC based encoding architecture. It's how they can be so insanely good and profitable at the same time. Meta has their chip. There's other large hyperscalers in China who have built their own chips. So the fact that dedicated hardware, ASICs are coming into the network is not like, oh, that's unusual. The largest platforms in the world are doing it. But unfortunately, and that's the opportunity for NETINT is the opportunity. None of those platforms have opened up that technology to anyone outside of their ecosystem, anyone other than like Google. It's only YouTube. It's not on GCP. And so our tag is, we built this for the rest of you. So it's great. If you're Meta, if you're Google, fine. You've got the balance sheet to go finance a $500 million chip project. But for everyone else, they don't have that. And so it sounds like that's very similar to what you're doing.
I think so. I think with VPUs and what you guys are doing with ASICs, early in my career, actually it was in the EDA space and worked on FPGA ASIC design and all that kind of stuff. And it's true. Like I look at the efficiency numbers of what NETINT ASICs can do with their VPUs, and it's a tenth of what you can do with general purpose, whether it's a GPU or an FPGA or even CPU resources. Because it's obviously application specific. It's built just for this task. I think with AI, I think you're going to see an evolution there on the hardware side as well. I think there are some general purpose, hardware that's getting built. But I think it's specific to video. You might see an evolution there as well. I don't know enough about it to comment educatedly on it.
Yeah,
but you are right.
We have, we have a small computational block on the VPU on the second generation, the Quadra. It's 15 tops. If you have our 2-chip PCI version, the T2A, it's actually 18 tops per chip. So it's a total of 36 tops, which is, if you're not familiar with what that means, is that low power, medium power, or high power in terms of computational power. It's maybe more towards the lower side, but there are some more basic use cases that can provide a lot of value. Things around like scene detection. It's interesting that you mentioned that. That's actually, there's models that can be run directly on the VPU that will reduce the throughput, but not so far that it's not practical, to implement. There's things around face detection, not necessarily that you would, use it to see, oh, is that Mark Donegan or Ryan Jespersen, but it's a human and some information around that then could be fed back into, into encoding optimization, into rate control. So there's some interesting things coming, that we're certainly looking at. Our 3rd generation chip will be taped out early next year. And you certainly can expect that we're going to be investing a lot more real estate on the chip for AI. We're being a little bit tight-lipped, to say exactly what that's going to look like. But, believe me, we're watching very closely what the use cases are that are emerging, how people want to use AI in video encoding and video processing workflows. And, we think we can bring some more added value there.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting space. I think another prediction you made me think about is, it's not even a prediction, it's already happening. So Cloudflare quite famously blocked the LLMs from going and scraping their content, right? And I think that's the next evolution. It's already happening where, broadcasters are finding a hard time to create value. Like I saw the Skydance merger acquisition, went through last week. Finally got approved.
Yeah.
But, these huge volumes of information that broadcasters have or that, content producers have that's worth a lot. That's a lot of IP. That's a lot of copyright. There's been some I'm not going to mention the politician, but very famously last week said that's not our problem. And it's such the wrong thing to say.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot of acquisition happening around not trying to monetize content, but scraping content and legally scraping content and licensing people to go and look at your entire library. Because there's an argument to all the knowledge in the world that's in books, and there's HarperCollins, there's publishers who own that content, plus the owners themselves or the authors themselves, there's an enormous value, and that's an unrealized value for LLMs to become more intelligent and be trained. So I think the thing that we're already seeing is the tenders that we're winning from an AI perspective are very focused on, we want to retain privacy and control of our LLM. We can still use the cloud to go deploy this, but we want it to be in our own private cloud, not to be accessible to anyone outside of that. Those privacy concerns are why, yes, we have a self-service SaaS that runs on public cloud and uses public LLMs, but really a lot of what we're seeing in our POCs that we're working on and some of the tenders we've already started are actually based on, let's go start creating our own LLM, because that has a huge intrinsic IP value when it comes to being the national broadcaster of any country. You have sometimes 75 to 100 years of content that is worth a lot to a lot of people. And I think that is going to change. Instead of us going and making money as an OTT provider, which is hard to do, it's kind of a race to zero competing with the Netflixes and the Prime Videos of the world. Here we can go and actually sell this content to potentially LLMs or people looking to
Well, there's a model
models
there, right? I mean, Reddit famously, 2.5, 3 years ago now, really challenged, OpenAI, based on, at the time anyway, and I haven't followed all the details, but I read enough headlines to know that, they're like, hey, you're not just going to be scraping Reddit, and getting it all for free. And then other publishers followed suit. And in some cases, again, off the top of my head, I don't know the numbers, but, they're able to get, as the saying goes, real money, because there's real value in that training data. And, so Reddit or any other publisher can say, no, you're not going to scrape for free. And yes, it's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you, like a significant amount. So that's a new revenue opportunity as well, which strikes me as what every media publisher and vertically integrated, content owner, media house is looking at, and certainly is actively trying to figure out how to unlock the value there.
And I think retaining it as a content producer, when you look at YouTube, which is the largest streaming service in the world, you sign off your rights, right, for your content to go and get scraped. And Google's been training their models based on that data. It's an interesting time.
Cool.
I think, if you've been in the industry for like 20 years and you're consulting, that consulting isn't free. That's knowledge, that's experience.
That's right.
You should be able to monetize it. And,
absolutely.
I think that's going to become more of a legal argument. You can see it maybe go up to the Supreme Court in the United States and across the world when it comes to that piece.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting, but I think no one disagrees, that the creators, those individuals, those companies, those organizations that put in the immense amount of time, energy, and dollars, capital to creating those content pools, that they need to be rightfully compensated, for it. So I want to end here, Ryan, because I'm curious. I meant to ask this question earlier, but let's end on this one. So, are there any specific LLMs, foundational models that you're finding are more desired, or I'm trying to avoid the work better, because everything is so contextual to what you're trying to do. But I think people would be interested to the extent that you can share which foundational models that you're using, if there's any that you're tracking, any shortcomings that you're waiting for model developers to overcome. What can you share around that?
I think it depends. I mean, we obviously use several when it comes to our service, depending on what we're doing, because there are better models that have just better experience that have been trained for specific purposes. One really interesting one that I've been doing some work on is Cloud Code. Or Claude Code, I should say, from Google, is anyone who's been coding, like, it's far and away the best LLM to be using for doing any kind of coding. And because they've been purposely training it to actually do that particular purpose, right? I think the LLMs are interesting because we've had a variety of use cases. Everything that we did with Media Copilot was try to build this in the cloud, yet we've had a lot of demand, not a lot, but several of our big POCs have been almost local or wide hybrid deployments, and you're limited by the size of the language model that you can use on a local deployment or at the edge. So that we've had to adapt it, some of our use cases or our infrastructure to be able to train a model specific for a particular purpose. Like I was saying, for the remote production use case and the post-production use case, we trained it for this unscripted reality show, or we're going to train it with pictures of the contestants and content from the previous season, so it actually knows what we're trying to do. So similarly with the ones you have to look at, depending on what you're trying to build, go and do some research on where they have, and use AI to do this. Go find research on which is the best model for X purpose, whatever X happens to be.
That's right.
And I don't mean X within the context of Gronk. I mean X in the context of.
Understand. For your specific objective. I think I'm leaning incredibly heavy into AI usage across literally everything I do. I feel like I'm quite advanced, and then I go on, X or LinkedIn or whatever, and I see these vibe coders, these vibe marketers, and I'm just like, wow, I'm not even scratching the surface, like they're like, here's my whole company of one with my 35 AI agents who are handling everything from accounting to, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm not even scratching the surface there. But it is good guidance, is that you just have to actually use, test. It is so application specific, and there is no sort of use this model, it's the best. So
and I think the other piece I'll throw in there is using MCP servers. That's the big trend that I'm seeing now. Is you can use them to actually train it for a particular use case. And I think
that's right.
we're already adapting Media Copilot to be able to train that against someone's MCP server for their specific use case. Because there are workflows that we haven't even thought of. So what an MCP server allows you to do is very quickly train it for your use case, but leveraging someone's technology at a kind of a deeper level, right? That's already,
would you
already been
guys
done.
even turn Media Copilot into an MCP server?
That's our CTO is actually working on that right now. So yes, okay. So that's watch here, watch the space. But cool. This has come out of, once again, the idea of selling an agent, right? To do that. And I think in the short term here, by IBC, we're going to actually have some demos here of different ways we've done this for real use cases.
All right. Well, I can't wait to see it. Well, Ryan, this was a great conversation. I'm really happy we were able to talk about this. It's a hot space, but it's the thing that I like is now we're far enough down the road. A year and a half ago, I think all of us, there was a little bit of rolling of the eyes with AI, and I'm speaking in the media and entertainment, in the streaming space, because everybody had bolted on AI to their marketing. It's like wherever you could insert AI, there it was. AI was there. Now we're a year and a half down the road, and there's still plenty of companies who I think are still sort of bolting it on. But now there's companies like Cires 21 and many others who are building real applications and use cases and bringing real value. And it's only growing and expanding every day. So it's wonderful to hear what you're doing. And I would encourage for all the listeners, if you're going to be at IBC, this is a shameless plug, to stop by the NETINT VPU ecosystem booth and have a look at what Cires 21 is doing, get a demo, and hang out. Enjoy a coffee on us. And I think we're having a cocktail party, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So, it's going to be a fun place. So it was good talking with you, Ryan.
Yeah, great to see you as always, Mark, and we'll share a beer together in Amsterdam.
Yes, we will. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for listening to Voices of Video. And until next time, happy encoding with AI.